On November 10, 1995, SingleTrack and Sony Interactive Studios America would publish a game known as Twisted Metal. It was a chaotic, adrenaline-fueled vehicular combat game that pushed the limits of the PS1 hardware. It had memorable characters, fast-moving vehicles, destructible environments, and split-screen multiplayer. It was a huge breakthrough for Sony, but not only that, it was a critical and financial success, earning the Electronic Gaming Monthly's coveted Game of the Year award and over $28 million. The Twisted Metal franchise spawned a number of sequels, ranging from forgettable to downright genre-defining, but it spawned something else: copycats. Dozens of potential challengers emerged, vying to get the spotlight that Twisted Metal had maintained. Very few got close, but there was one game series that not only proved a solid contender, but many have proclaimed, myself included, a game better than the one that inspired the genre. My name is Rod with Press Start, and this is the ripoff that fought against Twisted Metal with style. This is Vigilante 8. Created by Activision before they became the Call of Duty guys, Vigilante 8 separates itself from the competition by utilizing its plot, gameplay, characters, and of course, theme. The plot of Vigilante 8 is ripped straight out of a 70s action movie. Set in 1975, a group of oil tycoons named Omar, or the Oil Monopoly Alliance regime, hires a team of mercenaries, the Coyote, along with their leader Sid Byrne, to destroy competing oil companies across the American West. Due to turmoil all over the US, law enforcement is unable to help, rendering suburban and rural areas to fend for themselves. This leaves a trucker convoy with no options other than fighting back and assembling his own team of drivers known as the Vigilantes. This story sets up a conflict rather than a contest, allowing the narrative to flow nicely and intertwine. This is best established in the cutscenes, or screenshots if you played on Nintendo 64 like I did. The cutscene endings are also canon to the story and future games. As fun as I find the Twisted Metal franchise to be, the endings of characters' quest lines are often very dissatisfying. Now, this is of course attributed to the monkey paw style of wish granting that all of the characters are fighting for. But beating the entire game to have my character not only not get their wish, but a horrible fate often left a bad taste in my mouth as a kid. And again, as much as I love Twisted Metal, the idea of murdering other drivers in vehicular combat simply because my character wishes to be famous doesn't seem like a great driving force for that character. And as a player, it gives the entire game a grimy feel. A tad hard to explain correctly, but I know many of you watching this will agree with me. But controlling a character who is smooth as silk, a bounty hunter, tracking down the FBI's most wanted Australian-born terrorists, well, I'm in. But before we jump into the aesthetics and semantics, how does this baby handle? Sorry, that was a bit creepy. How does the game play? Similar to most vehicular combat games, Vigilante 8 is all about driving around a map and destroying other vehicles in the level. Cars in this game feel slightly different than most games of this genre. For starters, the vehicles are slower than the ones in Twisted Metal. Some might say that this causes the game to feel slow, but I highly disagree. I think it's refreshing at times to be able to land your entire weapon combo on an opponent without them whizzing by, or having to input a D-pad combo in order to freeze them to get off a few hits. Vehicles are also somewhat bouncy in Vigilante 8. It feels like the suspension on every vehicle is extremely fine-tuned. Cars can ricochet off of each other, off of the terrain itself, and even barrel roll under the right given circumstances. The best way to describe the feel is like a slower Rocket League. The larger vehicles feel slow and powerful, and the smaller vehicles feel quick and evasive. Oh, the gunfights feel great too. Every vehicle is equipped with their standard Mosquito machine guns, which start their firing rapidly and then eventually peter out into smaller bursts if held too long. Sadly, there is no upgrade for them, like in such games as Twisted Metal Black, but you don't always need the crust off your bread and butter. Some like the whole thing. Speaking of weapons, Vigilante 8 keeps it pretty simple in terms of scope. You have 5 weapons that you can drive around and collect, 6, including your character's special weapon. But Rod, I hear you muttering, only 6 weapons? That is far too few, but gather this in your frontal cortex. The game of chess also only has 6 weapons to use, and that is to this day the most played game of all time, so dare I say it, checkmate? Also, these weapons have combos that can be put into the D-pad, vastly changing their use. Each weapon has like 3 different special combos. Like the mines can be comboed into one giant mine that like gravity pulls everyone in it for 5 seconds. They can also turn into these like floating mines that seek out enemies. And they can do this freaking cluster bomb thing. Dude, this game is so freaking gas, dude. Okay, sorry. I will now retreat back into my essayist persona. But yes, the weapons in Vigilante 8 are, as an average, stronger than those in Twisted Metal, except that chainsaw thing from 2012. That thing's amazing. But another interesting thing about Vigilante 8, or V8, I'm going to call it V8 from now on, is that your special doesn't regenerate over time like in most vehicular combat games. You can get it straight up from one of these green crates, or even a normal brown random crate that's around the map. This gives people who have studied the maps advantage over those who haven't, just like in many old first-person shooters. You can say this is cheap, but I think it creates situations where players and enemies are vying for the same power-ups and clashing over it. All of this is kept in check, however, by the max inventory your vehicle can carry. See, vehicles can only carry 3 different weapons at a time. If you pick up another while you have 3, it will drop the other weapon off for a short amount of time to be picked up by somebody else. And I'll admit, this can kind of suck at times, especially if you get launched into another weapon and didn't want it, but it just creates an element of fun that I really enjoy. Also, many of the weapons have auto-targeting, but aren't 100% accurate depending on the avoidance factor of the vehicle. Avoidance factor is something that isn't really common in most of these types of games. Basically, smaller vehicles are quicker, but they're also more prone to not getting hit by auto-targeting weapons. Basically, the bigger your vehicle is, the more armor it has, but the more likely it is to be hit by these auto-targeting weapons, and smaller ones can speed around and avoid getting shot. Oh dang, I didn't see what time it was. Oh, do y'all hear that? It's whammy time. Whammy time. Time for a whammy. Whammy. Whammy, whammy, whammy. Whammy, 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 whammies. What is a whammy indeed, I hear you ask? A whammy in Vigilante 8 is very simple. Whammies multiply the damage of the last weapon hit. Think of them like a critical hit, but containing more wham. To acquire a whammy, the player must successfully hit the opponent with 2 of their selected weapons in a combo attack, or just using certain special weapons in rapid succession. When whammies are shown on screen, they will display a whammy along with the amount of times the whammy multiplies its worth. For example, 2x whammy, 3x whammy. It can get kind of crazy. Quickly cycling through your weapons in order to get these crits is so fun, but it also allows you to total your opponent's vehicles. See, when a car is about to be destroyed, it starts deploying this like white smoke and this long horn sound. And during this time, if you whammy it or hit it with your special ability, you get to utterly destroy them, and even getting a cool voice line from your character. There are also some power-ups that you can pick up on the map that aren't weapons. There's this green diamond that you can pick up, which is a shield that makes you invulnerable for a short period of time. There's also blue X, and this multiplies the damage of your standard equipped weapon that you have. And then there's, of course, the yellow Z. This upgrade moves the auto-aim reticle of your vehicle off kilter for opponents, so that allows you to avoid some auto-targeted weapon shots. Oh, and of course, there's the wrench. Mixer Fix-It, the Metal Messiah, Big Steel. We love the wrench, baby. See, this heals your vehicle a large portion and lets you keep on trucking. And I always kind of liked that it was a wrench more than a health pack like in other game series, because, I mean, it's a wrench. It makes sense. It fixes your vehicle. But I digress. See, Vigilante 8 takes a unique approach to its single-player campaign with what it calls Quest Mode. It's a series of objective-based levels designed specifically for each character. Rather than simply throwing you into random vehicular combat arenas, the game ties objectives to the character stories, giving each mission a sense of purpose beyond just blowing things up. For each character, you're presented with different goals depending on their backstory and motivations. Let's take Convoy, for example. We'll talk about him in a bit, but he's the leader of the Vigilantes, and one of his missions might task you with defending an oil refinery from attacks. And this isn't just about survival, it's tied to Convoy's mission of protecting America from a fuel crisis, which forms a core part of his narrative arc. On the other side of the coin, we have Sid Byrne, the leader of the Coyote. One of his missions might ask you to take out a rival company or destroy key structures in order to push forward the more chaotic agenda. And it's so cool because it's not just mindless mayhem, it's destruction with a purpose. And what's interesting is that while the primary objective is required to complete to move forward, there are often bonus objectives that are hidden or optional. And completing these can unlock new vehicles, characters, or special abilities. Now, they're usually a bit more challenging, sometimes asking you to defeat enemies in a specific way or uncover hidden areas on the map. This added layer gives the levels a strategic depth that kind of keeps the gameplay engaging and rewards those who want to dig deeper into the game's world. Overall, these objective-based levels bring the story and gameplay together, making each character's journey feel unique and giving players a real sense of progression as they work through each storyline. But Rod, what about the drivers? The cornerstone of the vehicular combat game. Do we get any characters as memorable as Mr. Grimm or Sweet Tooth? Well, yes and no. Twisted Metal was created during the era where like being satanic and evil was still scary to people instead of being cringe.
I like this all the time. That's the problem. It's not just playtime. It's all the time.
All the time is playtime.
Oh, okay. For some people.
Like when a hot topic would be a scary place for a kid to go inside of instead of a place that you buy those hats. You know what kind of hats I'm talking about. So a lot of these memorable characters from Twisted Metal made bank because they were the perfect embodiment of like that era, and they're like magical and deformed and honestly badass. But V8 changes this and focuses on more realistic characters. Maybe realistic is the wrong description. I think they're more like exaggerated movie stereotypes, sort of like Bond villains, where they have one thing that is like their thing, like how Jaws has steel teeth. Jaws, the Bond villain, not the shark. I'm rambling, sorry. Let's meet our cast. Vigilante 8 focuses a lot on characters, the vehicle they drive, and of course the special weapons they use. And given the game's more grounded focus on Americana and sci-fi as opposed to magic and spirits, each driver has a vehicle that has its own fictional make and model, even the year it was built. Cars and their drivers can often become one in these types of games. I mean, we all know Sweet Tooth as the clown, but we also know it as the ice cream truck. It's kind of this one thing. But what comes to mind when I say a vehicle like Spectre? See, in a game like Twisted Metal, a majority of the time, the vehicle takes precedent over the character who's driving it. And Vigilante 8 focuses more on the characters who are driving the vehicle than the vehicle itself. This is due to the corporate branding of the game's world and easier to separate. And I have no issue with the way Twisted Metal does these things, but I sometimes think it's fun to be driven by the character's story. In Twisted Metal, they have this guy Axel. He's awesome, right? And he's definitely like the mascot of Twisted Metal 2. But we see him in this crazy vehicle contraption, and we see Axel because the guy is right in front of us and he's dangling. It's a very hard silhouette to shake. And that's a vehicle in Twisted Metal that is character driven. But if we think of a vehicle like Spectre, the concept of that character is mainly driven by the vehicle itself being fast and having, phantom missiles or some type of special ability. And my most obvious proof of that is, can you tell me the names of the drivers of Spectre? Just between the characters that drive Spectre in Twisted Metal 1 and 2, there's a completely different dynamic at play here. In the first Twisted Metal, the driver's, what's his name? Let me look up. His name's Scott. His name's Scott Campbell. You should have known that, right? Scott Campbell is a ghost who is possessing the car of Spectre and driving in order to win the tournament to become human again. That's an awesome driving narrative. But in Twisted Metal 2, it's an actor named Bruce, and he's struggling to gain fame and recognition, so he enters the tournament with the wish to become a worldwide superstar. These two characters are so dynamically different that the car becomes the center of attention as opposed to the character driving it. And there isn't a wrong way to do this. I think Twisted Metal characters are very memorable. But the really refreshing thing about Vigilante 8 is that it is about the driver, and the vehicle is just the tools or the outward expression of how these characters accomplish their mission. Thank you for joining me on that rant there, but let's run down our character list of Vigilante 8, shall we? First up is Beeswax. He's a disgruntled beekeeper who discovered that his bees had become irradiated. Who or what is responsible for this was never really revealed, but it caused him to go insane. He disliked city slickers and did whatever he could to keep them off his land. He joins the Coyotes to show the world how dangerous he was, and in doing so, becomes wanted by the FBI. Beeswax drives the Stag pickup, a rusted green pickup truck with a camper attached to it. It has low speed but decent armor to allow it to survive in battles. His special weapon is the Gamma Swarm, sending his bees out, knocking up and damaging any opponent they catch. Seeing a fat golden beehive move in and attach itself to your vehicle is always a welcome sight.
Gonna sting you real good.
Beeswax's rival in the story mode is Chassis, Chasey, Cheesy Blue is an FBI agent who was sent to investigate the auto skirmishes of 1977 and their possible connection to the mega oil conglomerate Omar. Chassis drives the 1967 Rattler. It has great speed but weak armor. This car is possibly the fastest in the game, which allows you to outrun most enemies. Chassis Blue's special weapon is the Gridlock, a missile rack mounted on the front of the car. It shoots 9 glowing balls of energy that deal decent damage to the opponent and can potentially stall their engine.
Let's get on with the mission,
Up next is the disco-crazed hitman Boogie. Boogie is a man in small stature but big in flair. He owed some money to Sid, more on him later, and agreed to become a hired gun to pay off the debt. He has an immense hatred of John Torque of the Vigilantes and will use as much force as possible to take him out each encounter they have. He drives a brown 1976 Leprechaun, a gremlin-inspired car that has average speed, below average armor, but one of the best avoidance ratings of the game, making him one of the more difficult targets to hit with weapons like the motor or the guided rockets. His special weapon is the Disco Inferno, a giant disco ball that not only damages nearby cars, but juggles them in midair for the duration of the special.
Whoa, let's move to the groove.
Boogie's rival is the man with the most. The most what, you ask? If you gotta ask, you won't ever know. It's John Torque. John Torque was a down-on-his-luck gambler that owed some money to some shady people. His reasons for joining the Vigilantes is a mystery, but Sid Byrne was a nationally wanted terrorist and gang boss, so the reward money was most likely the reason. Despite this being the case, it never damaged his friendship with Convoy. John drives the 1969 Jefferson, a white pimp mobile that was decently armored and had moderate speed. His special move is the Bass Quake, a giant stereo mounted in the trunk that sends out a damaging shockwave that causes all nearby environment to tremble. This special is honestly hilarious, sending cars flying in every direction each time it's used.
You ready to roll the dice, bro?
If the Vigilante series had a central protagonist, the argument could be made that this next character is that person. This is Houston 3. Omar not only specializes in oil, but also in cybernetics. Houston 3 was a biobot created by the company. She was once a normal woman named Tanya, but after her alteration, she was placed in the Coyote Auto Gang to keep an eye on Sid Byrne and his activities. But as the Vigilantes began to push back the Coyotes, Houston started to question her programming, as well as develop feelings for the Vigilante leader, Convoy. Houston drives the 1975 Palomino, a car that featured all-around stats with an added emphasis on speed. Houston 3's special weapon was the Death Ray 38-X, a laser beam turret that dealt significant damage upon contact. It's capable of passing through terrain and obstacles, as well as removing power-ups and weapons from enemy vehicles when fired quickly.
I may be half human, but I'm all woman.
Her rival in the game is my personal favorite character, Slick Clyde. Not much is known about Slick, though the Vigilante 8 booklet labels him as a playboy. In the opening scene of the first game, he helped Convoy and his Vigilantes fight Sid Byrne and his Coyotes at a military weapons depot. It is here that Clyde discovers a lightning dispensing apparatus, which he thought was just a cool antenna. This becomes his staple weapon in the first game. And according to his Vigilante 8 quest, Slick had little interest in joining the Vigilantes, but John Torque kind of bullied him into it. Clyde drives a 1970 Clydesdale. It has somewhat all-around good stats, but somewhat lacking in avoidance. Slick Clyde's special weapon is the White Lightning. When fired, a ball of electricity is shot up in the air and rains down on the nearest vehicle, damaging and stalling it.
Yeehaw! Here I come, hit!
The tiniest gal with the most firepower is a hard one to deal with. Introducing Sheila. Sheila is Convoy's often rebellious niece. It was never revealed what happened to her actual parents, but nevertheless, she loves her uncle like an actual father. When Convoy put together the Vigilantes, Sheila desperately wanted to join, but her uncle refused to include her. Unfazed, she secretly built up a vehicle to help out. She may have been helped out by John Torque. After catching up with Convoy, he was furious with her at first, but lets her join anyway. Sheila drives the 1974 Strider, a dune buggy-like vehicle that is hard to hit but has the weakest armor in the game. Sheila's special weapon is the Tantrum Gun, a giant minigun that can rack up damage with each shot and can knock off any weapon, including special weapons, off enemy vehicles. Unloading the full clip of enemies and seeing their cars spin out in the air is so satisfying.
Hey, let's get wild, okay?
The other young blood in the game is the young man who drives the vehicle on the cover, Molo. Molo had always been a troublemaker and looked to the Coyote leader Sid Byrne as somewhat of a hero. It was his biggest wish to join the Coyotes and cause extreme havoc. Well, one day, while he was taking the bus to school, the driver left for a bathroom break. Molo stole the bus and set out to find his hero. He catches up with him in the middle of a Coyote vigilante skirmish, but Sid refused to recruit him. Undaunted, Molo sets out to prove himself and focuses his sights on Sheila. Molo drives the massive 1966 school bus, a vehicle that has sluggish speed but incredible armor. Molo's special weapon is the Smog Check, a giant exhaust pipe mounted on the back of his vehicle that spews black smoke, which damages and stalls any vehicle making contact with it. And I'll admit, this is a strange weapon to put on a sluggish Goliath of a vehicle, but the stalling of the vehicle's hits makes sense so that you as the bigger car can catch up.
Get to the back of my bus, haha!
Up next is every Tumblr girl's favorite character, Loki. Before he became Sid Byrne's lackey, he was the top pilot at a secret Site 4 base in Nevada. He tested out strange aircrafts, captured alien UFOs, but crashed one purely by accident. They released him shortly after, and since then it has been his goal to sneak back in and pilot an alien aircraft once again. How he met Sid is unknown, but Sid probably hired him with the promise that he could get Loki in the air again. Considering the raid on a secret base is in the opening movie Vigilante 8, he probably would have kept his word. But because of his increasing insanity, Loki became more and more obsessed with flying a UFO, to the point where he started talking like a fighter pilot even though he was in a car. As revealed in his quest, Loki starts to obsess over Dave, because through him, Loki could potentially pilot the aircraft once again. Loki drives the Glen 4x4, a green army jeep that is small and hard to hit. It has below average speed and average armor, but it makes up for it with its special weapon. Loki's special weapon are the scatter missiles, which are large missiles mounted on the back of his car that seek out nearby enemies, rain down on them, causing massive damage. Side note, Loki to this day kind of confuses me design-wise. I'm just kind of lost as to what race he is. I mean, look at this. What am I looking at here? Maybe that's not important, but I mean, is he's also like sculpted to look a little more extraterrestrial? I don't know. I'm clueless.
Fasten your seatbelts and get ready for takeoff.
The space race continues with our next guy, Dave. Dave is a hippie who believes aliens are real and are mankind's friends. He spends almost every night trying to establish contact with them, but is typically unsuccessful. He fights for the side of the Vigilantes, but does not appear to be directly affiliated with them. Just some random hippie blowing things up, I guess. Dave drives the 1970 van. Just a van-ass van. A bulky vehicle, true to its name, that had below average speed, but it has decent armor. Dave's special weapon is Invasion, a trio of UFOs that attack a nearby vehicle for decent damage, depending on the number of times each UFO hit the opponent.
Sensors show no intelligent life.
Next is the leader of the Coyotes, the one who made it all happen, the Aussie from hell, Sid Byrne. So we do need to take a moment here. Vigilante 8 having its big bad go by the name of Sid Byrne as like a sideburn pun is always kind of weird to me. But this kind of thing, I guess, leans into the Bond villain thing I was talking about earlier. Sid is also a weak point in terms of narrative. He's just an arsonist and gang boss. He's hired by Omar to destroy oil fields, and that's it. He is 100% money driven. I mean, I guess in reality he's one of the most realistic villains in a series. Sid drives the 1969 Manta, a Corvette-type car with a flaming paint job that is very fast and has decent armor. Sid Byrne's special weapon is the Breath of Fire. It shoots small balls of flame that set his enemies on fire, but deals little damage. Okay, real talk, this might be the most underwhelming special in all of Vigilante 8, and you gave it to the big bad guy? I don't know. Couldn't be me. Couldn't be me out here. Couldn't be me out there giving the worst specials to the most important characters. Couldn't be me out there, Lux of Flux. Couldn't be me out there, Activision. Couldn't be me. But, yeah. I mean, what do I know?
Is it getting hot in here?
And for our leader of the Vigilantes, it is none other than Convoy. Convoy is a rough and tough cowboy who fights for what's right. He is the leader of the Vigilantes and is Sheila's uncle. He created the Vigilantes to bring Sid Byrne and his Coyote gang to justice. Convoy drives the 1972 Moth truck. It is an easy victim to attacks, but it has incredible armor, possibly the highest in the game. Convoy's special weapon was the Steel Belter, which are tires that are filled with explosives. When released, they hone in on the nearest vehicle, although with poor accuracy, and explode, causing huge damage. Another cool thing about Convoy is just that he's like in his 50s and is just letting it all hang out, and in doing so, just picking up hot black women. That's kind of neato.
Ain't nothing on earth can stop a convoy.
Now, our final character in V8 isn't a vigilante or a coyote. Why, you ask? Why, I answer. Why the Alien is a special unlockable character. Side note, Vigilante 8 was made before the days of DLC, so the entire game was packed with its content, and the way to get it was to play the game. Now, I understand I'm showing my age a bit here, but it's really important that we emphasize when things work, and having unlockable things in a game drives the replayability of a game, which should ultimately be the goal of a game. Anyhoozle, look at this thing. This is the unlock map. So like, To unlock a character, you have to beat the quest mode with these two characters first, right? And then you get this character. And then to get these stages, holy crap, I haven't even talked about the stages. Mother of Christ, this game is good. You have to get these stages by beating it with these two characters and then beating the quest mode with them. And then when you do that, you get Why the Alien. You can also do cheat codes to unlock everything, but if you were playing before Google existed, like I did, you did it the hard way. Sorry, side note over. Why the Alien is an alien who crash landed on Earth during the events of Vigilante 8. He came into contact with Dave and was told about another alien who was captured and dissected, causing him to swear revenge or perhaps rescue his fellow alien from the hands of the American government. Y pilots the 1964 Luxo saucer, the only vehicle capable of flight in the game. In V8, it has wonderful speed and decent armor, and I'm going to emphasize this again. He can fly. He's easily the strongest character in V8, and it isn't even close. Why the alien's special weapon was the blue laser. It was just a laser gun mounted on top of his UFO that shoots a blue-coated laser that deals massive damage. It works very similar to Houston 3's death rate, but it deals so much more damage at the cost of inaccuracy. Y is the epitome of overpowered in V8, and it's so worth it. You spent all this time beating every character's quest and playthrough, and getting this sick alien saucer at the end is such a prize worth getting.
Let the invasion begin!
To me, all of these characters shine, except Sid Burn, he's kind of lame. And the coolest part about each one of them is that they have a correlation with each other. In fact, the ending cutscene rewards you obtain flow into one long narrative story, so you really have to beat the game with everyone to get the full scope. This game just oozes with theme and style. It feels so American and in a good way. From the moment that first soundtrack kicks in, you are grooving. This game's soundtrack destroys Twisted Metal's entire library, and yes, I'm even counting Dragula. Fight me. The stages themselves are memorable, taking place over the American West. They're completely different vibes. Snowy ski resorts, lush farms, vivid Vegas, and even the unlockable stage on the 64 version, Dreamland 64. The stages are destructible. They have environmental hazards like tidal waves or avalanches, airplanes taking off, giant balls rolling around. There are secret stashes of power-ups everywhere. You can take a ski lift. God, this game is freaking incredible. The impact that this game had on the gaming industry is a bit lukewarm. It spawned a sequel, Second Offense, which is also top tier, but the franchise was a victim to the drought of vehicular combat games for years to come. I mean, yeah, we got Twisted Metal Black, which is a cornerstone of gaming in my opinion, and Twisted Metal Head On was pretty good, but like, that's been it. Oh yeah, we also had Twisted Metal 2012, but you and I both know that we played that half excited once we realized that the story mode was just an afterthought. These games cannot be difficult games to make. I mean, I don't know anything about programming and game development, but for the love of God, stop making racing games that are hyper realistic and give me one where the car has a goddamn special weapon that blows others up. Man, remember Destruction All-Stars? No, of course you don't, because it didn't have the understanding of what makes these games fun. I want a new vehicular combat game, and if it can be one without Sweet Tooth, it's preferred. Not that there's anything wrong with Twisted Metal, but like, dude, we could do so much more with this genre. And I swear, if you tell me about a vehicular combat game that is on mobile and has microtransactions, I'm going to find you and throw a brick through your living room window. Vigilante 8 is a wonderful time capsule of a game where developers had to make the most of what they had. There's a lot of love and excitement in these types of games. And I may be biased in saying this, but this game was the clear best ripoff of Twisted Metal. And I think I've made a fair case here. So talk to me. What do you think about Vigilante 8? What was your favorite character or vehicle? And it could be from any vehicle combat destruction cool series. What was your favorite game in the genre? Is there another Twisted Metal ripoff or copycat that you think is better? Let me know, man. I love talking about these types of games. They're amazing. Oh, typical YouTube outro here. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, share this with your friends, yada yada yada. Listen, I truly appreciate you hearing me out and listening to me ramble about this game that I love. If you ever need anything at all, let me know. I'm Rod with Press Start, and I'll see you out there.